how about we begin in that same spirit of prayer? Would you join me? God, we come to you with full hearts, full of hopes and fears and joys and sorrows. Receive them all and guide us so that we can find that hope, so that we can be those beacons of light for one another, not with our light, not just based upon the current political winds, but based on the good news that we know through Jesus Christ. And may that be the most important breaking news in our lives every day. Help us in this time together to listen well and to love one another as we learn from one another and are guided by your Holy Spirit. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. So, this was 2 weeks ago, I believe. Weren't we 2 weeks ago on 2 weeks ago, weren't we on Matthew 21? We were finishing up that. Is that where we were at? Does anyone remember?
That's too long ago. Can't remember.
I know.
I thought it was 25.
I thought we got to 23. Maybe not.
Where's
the scripture about the hen and getting under the wings? And was that the last one?
Yeah, we did. So. Yeah. Oh, because then we got to the end of chapter 23, right? Yeah. Because we got to chapter 23, verse 37 through 39. Yes. How Jesus and the hen, we threw that in, that he wished to gather like a mother hen gathers her chicks. Yes.
I don't know why I remember that, but
I'm glad you did. So we have two big parables that we're going to try and get through today. And this is going to be all leading up to Jesus's, to the kind of Maundy, Thursday, and Passion narrative of chapter 26. But we're going to finish up chapter 25 today. Would somebody be willing to read? Matthew 25, verses 14 through 21, and someone be willing to read 22 through 30.
I'll read 14.
Okay. I'll finish up. How about that?
Okay, so 14 through 22?
Yes, ma'am.
Or through 21, okay.
Yeah.
Again, it will be like a man going on a journey who called his servants and entrusted his wealth to them. To one he gave 5 bags of gold, to another 2 bags, and to another 1 bag, each according to his ability. Then he went on his journey. The man who had received 5 bags of gold went at once and put his money to work and gained 5 bags more. So also the one with 2 bags of gold gained 2 more. But the man who had received 1 bag went off, dug a hole in the ground, and hid his master's money. After a long time, the master of those servants returned and settled accounts with them. The man who had received 5 bags of gold brought the other 5. Master, he said, you entrusted me with 5 bags of gold. See, I have gained 5 more. His master replied, well done, good and faithful servant. You have been faithful with a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Come and share your master's happiness.
And the one with 2 talents or 2 bags of gold also came forward, saying, Master, you handed over to me 2 talents. See, I have made 2 more talents. And his master said to him, well done, good and trustworthy slave. You have been trustworthy in a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Enter into the joy of your master. Then the one who received the 1 talent came forward, saying, Master, I knew that you were a harsh man, reaping where you did not sow and gathering where you did not scatter seed. So I was afraid, and I went and I hid your talent in the ground. Here you have what is yours. But the master replied, "You wicked and lazy slave. You knew, did you, that I reap where I did not sow and gather where I did not scatter? Then you ought to have invested my money with the bankers, and on my return I would have received what is my own with interest. So take the talent from him and give it to the one with 10 talents. For to all those who have, more will be given, and they will have an abundance. But from those who have nothing, even what they have will be taken away. As for this worthless slave, throw him into the outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth." And everyone lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Harsh.
Yeah, it is harsh. Why is Jesus telling this story? What is this parable about? I mean, this is a popular parable. Why? What is it about? What do you think? What's all this talk of talents and wicked masters and slaves and...
Well, just on the surface, I look at it like, God gives us talents and abilities and kind of use it for his good and for others, for their good also. But just on the surface, what popped in my mind was it really doesn't matter how much you've been given as long as you use it. Even if it's just one minute little thing, you might not think you are have much to contribute, but it's more the effort and the motivation of what you do with what you're given.
Yeah, making sure that whatever we have, we put to good use. Absolutely. Here's where I struggle with this is, what do we do about what this third, the first two servants or slaves, the first two don't make any reference to the personality or the character or the morals of the master. But this third one makes a pretty big claim. What do we do with that? Because I think so often we hear this parable and we say, oh, well, the master is God and we are the servants. But then are we agreeing with what this third person said? Is God this kind of a master? Or is this even supposed to be God? Is that how Jesus is telling it? Is Jesus saying that God is inherently evil? And how do we reconcile that? What do you think's going on there?
It's not today's lesson in grace, is it?
Unpack that more.
I don't know. My brain's in first gear. Grace is abundant in their lives, and you can use that grace to grow, to share. But I thought grace was abundant in our lives, even if we fail miserably. So maybe it's not about grace.
Because the master didn't really give him any grace. I don't know. I have a hard time with this one because, yeah, it's, he didn't take it and lose it. He didn't take it and spend it. At least he buried it for safekeeping.
And, it's so weird that the master would say you should have at least invested it and gotten back percentage of interest, because in Jewish usury laws, like, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't, well, at least if you are the banker, you shouldn't be charging interest. You shouldn't be making money on other people's investments. But yeah, it's a really strange one. Now, Diane, how do you feel? So did you say that the third one really didn't get anything, or really?
Well, I'm just saying at least the third
kept what he had.
He kept what he had. He hid it for safekeeping. So, I've always had a hard time with this. When he was so harsh with them, you wicked and lazy servant, it's almost like he was mad that, that third servant was pointing out how wicked he was. So I have a hard time, putting Jesus as the master here. I don't know. It's just a really hard parable, I think. I get the getting the talents and, doing what you can with your talents and increasing your talents and increasing, the God's kingdom and all that. But the third one, I don't know. I have a hard time with that one.
Well, I have a note here that says, we must not make excuses to avoid doing what God calls us to do. If God truly is our master, we must obey willingly. Give our time, our abilities, and our money aren't ours in the first place, and we are the caretakers, not the owners. So what we need to do is to use them to the best of our ability and see if we can get them to expand. And that's what the first two did. They made 100% on money that he gave them. Where can you find 100% today? Nowhere.
True. And, when you talk about the actual economics of it, no wonder that last slave is really concerned, because a talent would have equaled about 15 to 20 years of an average worker's salary. So we're talking like $1 million today. Each talent would be like $1 million. So, this master gives out 5 million to one, 2 million to another, and $1 million to this last one. So if somebody gave me $1 million, I gotta be honest, I would make sure I didn't lose that. I think I would be concerned about that.
Well, it says in here, he didn't just give it to them, because it says, when I returned, I would have received it back with interest. So was he really giving it to them, or were they supposed to do something to give it back to the master?
Yeah, that is true. Well, so the whole thing starts in that verse 14, that he's going on a journey and he's entrusting his property to them. So it sounds like he's either liquidated his property, or his property is simply the actual money itself. So it sounds like they are stewards of it, that it is clear that it would go back to their master. Yeah. So
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I guess I don't get too hung up on the specifics of the money or the economics. He got 5, he got 1, he got none. To me, the overall thing seems to be another lesson in your focus, your motivation. The first two, the third guy, his motivation was to protect himself. He was afraid of the master. He didn't want to do anything to jeopardize his own well-being. The other ones were willing to not focus on themselves, but I don't know. That's kind of the gist that I got.
They were
I
willing
think
to
that's
take a risk.
Yeah, they were willing to take a risk. And I think, to me, and so here's, because I struggle with this parable too, but I think the space where the gospel is for me is the trusting in the master. The issue, I think, with the third servant isn't that he didn't trust the market or the banking system. It's that he didn't trust the master. I think it could easily get missed, but in verse 15, it says that the master gave to each according to his ability. That do we really trust that the gifts that we have, that God knows, if the master is God, do we really trust that the gifts that we have been given are from God and that God knows what God's doing in giving them to us? Do we really trust it? And I don't know about you, when I hear this third servant makes the claim about the character of the master,
Mhm.
this happens all the time in our household. Finn, anytime when I'm asking Finn to do something that he doesn't want to do, if we've told him 5 times, hey buddy, we're getting ready to go for a bike ride, put on your shoes and your coat and get your mittens, might say it over and over and over again. And then when we're finally like, okay, Finn, we're leaving now. And then he'll all of a sudden, wait, that's not fair. No, I need this. And he'll always say, Dad, you're not being very nice. And I have to say, like, it's not that I'm not being nice. It's that we laid out expectations. We gave you timelines and you chose not to do anything about it. It's not that we're not being nice. We're just following through with the expectations. So I wonder if this third servant is kind of in that space of like, well, maybe this third servant is having envy that they didn't get those 5 talents or at least 2 talents. Maybe, and so what gift they have, they don't see it as a gift. And all they can see is it's not fair. I don't have what other people have. And so you must be really mean. You're not very nice, master, because you haven't given me that and I don't trust you. And so for me, I think it all boils down to, do we really trust, if that master is God? And can we be grateful for what we have? Or do we just spend all of our time brooding on what we don't have and viewing that as a reflection from God?
Yeah, and on that example of the kids and stuff, I know there's times, depending on the age of the kid, to where if they didn't do what you asked them and what you knew they were capable of, then they do lose out.
There's consequences.
If they were old enough, they don't get to go on the walk. They don't get to go on the bike ride. That's taken away from them.
Or at least they have to be cold when they do.
Yeah.
Cold
Yeah.
and shoeless. Cold and shoeless. Yeah.
Yep. That kind of situation. I think that's, yeah. So to me, but why? Okay. So even if we found some redeeming bits, so we both have in this story that for those who apply their talents, I know we focus a lot on this third, but for those who apply their talents, it grows in abundance. And for those who don't, you're missing out because you're losing out on the gifts that God wants for you to have. If you can only see what you don't have, you miss out on that. But let's take a step back further. So why is Jesus telling this parable?
Is it just to his disciples? I missed who he's telling it to.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to, because I think these are called like the last 5, or like there are like 5 or 7 discourses. And so like, this is like, he's rolling in like all of his last teachings. He's trying to get as many teachings as possible in. And I believe he is still speaking to the crowds, because this is all in chapter 22. He is talking when he was kind of calling out the scribes and the Pharisees. He was still in the temple and teaching crowds. And does anybody see? I don't know if this is, I think this is to the whole crowds.
And on Matthew 24, verse 3, it says, as Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples came to him privately tell us, they said, what will happen, when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age? So I wonder if it's just the
Just
disciples.
the disciples.
I think it is just
Yeah.
the disciples.
I think so too.
Well played.
Then he goes into talking about what the signs of the end of the
Mhm.
age.
So if he's just talking to the disciples, it kind of seems like he's giving them a heads up. You're going to be entrusted in this. I'm going to go away for a while, and I'm entrusting you with this property or my plan, or whatever you want to call it, and you need to work at it. You need to do well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, good. Wow. Hey, go team. That was, yeah, because I think when we see it in that context of like, this is Jesus talking specifically to his disciples. And remember, it wasn't that long ago that James and John's mom was, vying for them to get the right-hand seats. And, all still people concerned about who's the greatest. That maybe this is an example for Jesus to say to the disciples, it's not all going to be the same. Your ministries while I'm gone are not all going to be the same. But don't squander it. Don't be fearful in it. Be okay with what you have and put it to good use, and I'll make sure that it continues to grow. That's so good.
Steve, does it speak to not just their accountability, but to the quality of their relationship with Christ or their master?
I don't know. What do you all think?
The guy who didn't do anything acted like it was no big deal that he didn't do anything. I just really felt like his relationship with the master wasn't good.
Yeah, he's
Yeah.
kind of proud of himself.
Well, I don't see that he was necessarily proud of himself, not to disagree with you,
You can just say to me.
but he was fearful of him. He had a fearful relationship with the master. He was afraid what the master would do if he came home and he did not still have the same amount of money. So there was a fear factor there. But I also, I'm sure reading more into it than I should, but I think it's interesting that he does bring up a money issue when Judas Iscariot is about to betray him, and he knew that, and he was in charge of the money, but he clearly was not trustworthy. I don't know. That's kind of just really stretching it, I know, but
Well, I think it's a reminder that Jesus is going to be talking. I think mostly this is an allegory of using talents, although they were a measure. He could have used any other economic metrics, but to use literally the word talent, which even then, not only meant a gift, something within you, but also the money. So maybe there is something both talking economically and spiritually here. Absolutely. Well, this is so good. This is so rich. I want us to keep going because we'll see how this also gets played out. Would somebody be willing to read, to go on with verse 31 and then 31 to 40, and someone be willing to read 41 through 46.
I can read it 31.
All right. And who's going to finish up?
I can.
Thanks, Kathy.
When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him, He will sit on his glorious throne. All the nations will be gathered before him, and he will separate the people one from another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father, take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me."
Then he will say to those on his left, "Depart from me, you who are accursed, into the eternal fire prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was hungry, and you gave me nothing to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me nothing to drink. I was a stranger, and you did not invite me in. I needed clothes, and you did not clothe me. I was sick and in prison, and you did not look after me." They will also answer, "Lord, when did we see you hungry or thirsty or a stranger or needing clothes or sick or in prison and did not help you?" He will reply, "I tell you the truth, whatever you did not do for one of the least of these, you did not do for me." Then they will go away to eternal punishment, but the righteous to eternal life.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell me, I mean, I can almost guarantee every single one of us has heard this text before. What is this parable meant to you? I hear people all the time, we kind of just say, what we do unto the least of these, or even just the least of these. And I think most people instantly click to this parable. Usually, I'll say that at least usually when we've read this in worship, that it's just been, we just read that 31 through 40 and focus on those that are happily surprised that they did more than they even thought. And we don't usually focus on the other end of it. Why do you think Jesus tells both of these?
Because there's consequences.
What do you think
wants
he meant
people
by
to
it?
know what is going to happen to everybody instead of just one. So he gives both the upside and the downside.
Mm-hmm.
Kathy, what were you about to say too? Thanks, Ron.
I was just going to say there's consequences for your actions.
And your inactions.
Yes.
Yeah, I think this is a great, this is the only last judgment. There are two other places where Jesus kind of talks about end times, and one of those was in chapter 24. But there are only two other places in this entire gospel where Jesus talks about that. But this is the only last judgment scene. And where is belief in it? For example, in the Gospel of John, it's all these, Jesus did a whole bunch of signs and sayings, and it was always this idea in the Gospel of John, it always says, so that you might believe, so that you might believe, so that you might believe. Where is belief in this?
What, belief?
Belief.
Oh, belief?
Belief, yeah.
Well, I think if true Christians, that old song, they'll know we are Christians by our love. How can you believe in God? How can you believe in Jesus not take care of people, not and not, you know, clothe the all the things he said in there. I'm not reading it right now, but you know, we have a true relationship with Christ and a true belief in Jesus is the Son of God. I mean, to me, there is no question. There's action that goes with that belief.
Yes. Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Because I think there's no litmus test. There's no even a creed or a dogmatic, you know, there's no, you know, pop quiz about stances or memorizing scripture in here. It's about action that is informed by belief. You don't even have to name the belief, but you see it self-evident through the action. Good, great.
Well, if you go back to chapter 24 again, the initial question that the disciples asked was, when will we know the end? When you're, I think
Signs of the times.
signs of the times and that kind of thing. And all of the stories that Jesus told them, all the parables, were about the master going away and what did the servants do in his absence.
Right.
And I think for me, that's the question that I have to turn inward and say, what am I doing in my master's physical absence from my life?
Mm-hmm.
Am I making more money? Am I feeding the hungry? Am I, in chapter 24, there's, I think, talk about bushels and lights and that kind of thing. But for me, it's about, I'm left now, I'm physically left like the disciples were. And what am I doing?
As his representative.
Right.
I mean, that's his,
It reminds me of what I used to tell my students when I used to teach in an inner city school and the students were
Mhm.
98% at risk. Very strong drug activity and gang activity. And they would bemoan their situation with their life. My parents are drug addicts, you know, I have to take care of my siblings. I have to sleep under my bed so I don't get shot at night. And I would always say, that sucks, but what are you going to do with it? And it's that, what are you going to do with it question I see in this. It's, what are we going to do with what Christ has left us with?
Yeah, because I like that, because I mean, I think even though this is like a last judgment scene, that I mean, ultimately, I think what Jesus points us to and the fulfillment of the kingdom of God is a place where there aren't people imprisoned, where there aren't hungry people, where there aren't homeless people, where there aren't all these situations. And so I think that's a really good awareness that this is, all these parables are about what are you going to do in this in-between time, where we don't have a physical embodiment of God and of God's kingdom in a fulfilled 100% complete way. So we just get these little glimpses of it here and there.
And I think it's important, for me at least, to note that in all of these situations, there is a choice to be made. That we are not, we can choose to how we act and how we behave and what we do. That it's not just a handed down, you know, mandate, but that we have a choice and that God is allowing us to have a freedom of choice.
Yeah. And I love, I mean, how would you describe the reaction from that first group to those that that says, come you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you. How do you think that they reacted, or what's their response?
They were incredulous. When did we do that?
Yeah, they were really,
Seriously?
I mean, kind of happily surprised.
Yeah.
That he correlated it with doing it to him, for him. I mean, I think we get, sometimes we get wrapped up in the, we go to Matt Talbot and we feed these people and we do this ministry and we do that, different things. Not sometimes, I think, even consciously aware of who we're doing this for. It feels good to do it. That's cool. But it's like this morning, I woke up, not this morning, it was an all night. Are you awake? Yeah, I'm awake. Look at the polls, back and forth. But and at one point I really got kind of down, and I told Carly when I woke up, I said, I just have to, from here on out, no matter where it goes, I need to not let go of this. I mean, the last few months, partly because of the election, partly because of the unrest, but we've just really gotten a kind of a burr in our butt to do something about Black Lives Matter and social injustice and everything. And I can't just let that go now that the election's, it's like, I no matter who wins, if somebody else wins that I want to win, I still have a ministry. I still can keep going and moving forward with what we have, taken under kind of our new projects lately, but I have to realize who I'm representing. And sometimes when I talk on Facebook, I need to remember who I'm representing. So.
I get that, man. We could have a whole other conversation that is so true about social media and the confluence of our, the intersectionality, how each of us wears so many hats, and like, where is a space for you to, if you need a space to be angry and frustrated or scared, where is that space, and what can you, and social media mixes all of that up for so many of us. But, I just wanted to point out the surprise, because I think so often when we think, last week was All Saints Day. I think when we think of saints, or we think of those who are, the righteous, and that's how Jesus describes them in here, the righteous. We think of these otherly, Mother Teresa's and Dorothy Day's and, Gandhi and all these great, great people. But it's literally giving someone food and water and welcoming a stranger and giving your clothes to somebody who needs them, or visiting someone in prison. It's not a high bar, Jesus doesn't make it hard.
Right.
And for those who are at Jesus's left hand that are accursed, it sounds like all they had to do at some point in their life was offer somebody else a cup of water, somebody else some food, to go visit somebody else in need.
Right.
And if they would have done that once, they would have done it for Jesus.
Right.
So as this is a parable that includes Last Judgment, people always go towards like heaven and hell, and do these exist, and what does it look like? But again, that's a whole separate Zoom. That's a whole other study. But like, I think Jesus sets a really low bar for what, in some ways, of what he wants from us, of what it looks like to be righteous.
Well, Well,
And that
to
there
me,
are
it
so
just,
many easy, tangible ways to do it. Sorry, go ahead, Dan.
it for some reason, it keeps coming back in my mind that he just keeps reiterating in these examples of all it is, the overarching principle is our focus, our where we put our energy. Is it on me? Do I just think of myself, or is it for others? And both these parables and what we've been talking about just seems to reinforce that in my mind. If your focus is on others, then that's all there is.
Yeah.
Well, not all there is, but that's what he's trying to get at. If your focus is on others, you give them that cup of water. You don't keep it for yourself. You give them that jacket. So yeah, the bar is low, but the principle behind it is where your energy and your thought, get it off of yourself.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And it was so off themselves, they didn't really quite realize what they had done
That they were
of greatness.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I want to get one last, I know we only have about 13 minutes, but I want to keep pushing just a little bit, because if we're going to, after today, we have 3 sessions left, 3, and there is a lot of good stuff in here. So if it's okay, I would love to read one more little section to begin chapter 26. And I'll be happy to read unless somebody wants to, but is anybody feeling left out? Or are we okay if I go ahead and read? Okay, I'm going to read verses 6 through 16. Now, while Jesus was at Bethany in the house of Simon the leper, a woman came to him with an alabaster jar of very costly ointment, and she poured it on his head as he sat at the table. But when the disciples saw it, they were angry, and they said, "Why this waste? For this ointment could have been sold for a large sum and the money given to the poor." But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why do you trouble the woman? She has performed a good service for me. For you will always have the poor with you, but you will not always have me. By pouring this ointment on my body, she has prepared me for burial. Truly, I tell you, wherever this good news is proclaimed in the whole world, what she has done will be told in remembrance of her." Then one of the 12, who was called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priests and said, "What will you give me if I betray him to you?" And they paid him 30 pieces of silver. And from that moment, they began to look for an opportunity to betray him. So what jumps out at you, in this story about the woman, and then subsequently about Judas?
If I had been there, I would have gone, "Seriously, Jesus? You just got finished telling me to feed the poor and take care of the people, and now you're saying, look at her, what she's done to me." So, it seems quite contrasting to now I can look back and say, okay, I guess there's a time and a place for everything. But I think I would have said seriously.
She would have. Seriously? Just like that.
Yeah, I mean, and this is tricky, and it goes back to, we were talking about what to do with the talents, and we were talking about how we use them. But in both of these cases, as we remember, when Jesus was in chapter 25, Jesus was talking to the disciples about what to do after he was gone, about, what was going on after his death and resurrection. And so I don't know, I've always, it's a beautiful story, but it's always a little confusing, especially the ways that, some people have used that, have, oh gosh, where is it? verse 11, have used verse 11 to just ignore poor folks or to ignore causes of poverty or to even ordain it to be like, well, Jesus said there should always be poor people. So it's okay that we set up economic, situations that encourage that. I cannot believe that. Cannot believe that.
Well, and I
But-
think it was such an act of love on her part for him, and I think that would tie in, I think, with the previous love for him and consequently love for him for other people. So I think he was just really expressing how much love she had for him, and do we have that same kind of love for him that we would it was sacrifice for her too. So.
Well, she,
Yeah, and
go ahead. No, go ahead.
well, I think how often do we deny acts of love and deny the goodness and the intent of them in the name of, especially us good Midwesterners. We are prudent. We are often a little thrifty. I always tell the story. When Caitlin was a college minister when we were living in Kansas City 10 years ago, and at the church that she was serving, she needed to change the space, and she needed to get some carpet or a rug or something like that. And they literally had a room with a new carpet, but she couldn't use it because somebody had donated it, and they said, well, someday we might need this. She couldn't use it for the college ministry that they needed because someday they might need it. I think sometimes, or
Someday.
I know sometimes we as a church say thank you to folks. My philosophy has always been, I would rather say thank you to some people and potentially miss out on saying thank you to, there's always going to be more people that we need to say thanks to, but naming and saying thank you to somebody rather than, I've also seen churches where nobody ever gets thanked. All those hours, all those gifts, all that stuff never gets mentioned because we wouldn't want to possibly leave anybody out, or maybe it's not the most efficient thing to do. So I think for me, it's about Jesus really encouraging acts of love and also getting rid of, these disciples might be starting to go to this kind of hero space. You got to give people space so that somebody else can do it too. So that, everybody has gifts so that everyone can use their gifts. And for that woman, that was her gift and that was her offering to Jesus. Don't deny that.
And an expression of her, he says, she did it to prepare me for burial. So, she seemed to have a belief system they didn't possess yet.
Yeah, and this is after Jesus has told them multiple times he's going to be dying.
Right.
And their main response is, so Jesus, help us.
Right.
Help us. Make sure that we're in charge. Make sure that we're okay. And she's the only one that's focusing on, wow, he's got this big journey ahead of him.
She gets it. Yeah. She's a woman. She gets it.
And she was taking care of the need that was presented in front of her.
Exactly.
Obviously, she's rich. If she could afford the ointment to begin with, I'm assuming it was her ointment. And she could try and take care of more of the poor, but like he says, there are always going to be places for you to help out. But maybe he's kind of saying, if it's presented to you, if it's right in front of your nose, go ahead and do it, and don't worry about, like you were saying, everyone else at that moment. There'll always be time to think of the world, all the poor.
Absolutely. And I think this is Jesus making a call for self-care. Especially this year, I know, I've really had to lean into this idea in all parts of our lives, that to truly believe that I think every one of us is doing the best that we can. And to give ourselves space for that, and that, only each of us knows what we need. And so if you need, a you day, take that. If you need, and I think to give ourselves the space to put on that oxygen mask first in the emergency, so that we can help put the oxygen mask on somebody else after, so that we don't wear ourselves down. And I think that's an important part of this text too. So we're like 2 minutes away from the very end. Any closing thoughts, anything that we read that you didn't get to talk about fully, or that we talked about and you're still kind of thinking about it?
Well, you asked,
Any takeaways?
you'd ask about what we thought about Judas in that last part. And I just wondered if he didn't really agree with what Jesus said about the woman, and if that was kind of the turning point for him to say, this isn't right. I don't know if I agree with Jesus anymore. And if that's what made his decision to betray him.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, was this Judas's point where he starts to feel like that third servant in the parable of the talents? Yeah. And there's also too, it's interesting, the different gospels treat Judas differently in each one. And in some historians say that Judas was a part of the Zealots movement, was a part of the group that was trying to actively overthrow Rome in order to bring about the Messiah. And so certain gospels, especially Luke, kind of gives Judas a little bit of a pass. Not a pass, but just kind of contextualizes more. That maybe he was trying to give Jesus his moment to shine. But in Matthew, Judas is jaded. He is jaded, he is angry, and yeah, he's kind of given up on Jesus and saying, all right, well, I'm going to get mine. Where he's actively kind of bargaining. So how much could I get for this guy? Yeah. Good awareness. We'll see you, Diane. Any other kind of closing thoughts or takeaways from you?
And I need to, be quiet. So
If you want to say one thing, then I'll go my
Fine.
meeting.
I have nothing more to say. Bye. You guys
I
have a
don't
good
believe
week.
it.
Ron, were you saying something?
Yeah, I just told her I don't believe it, and I like the way she comes across with a lot of stuff, because she's got lots of ideas that I'd never thought of.
Carly's a deep thinker.
Well, and I think today was a perfect example where everyone's gifts together. We were able to really have, I think, some good reflection and a deeper understanding of some of this text. So we'll next week we'll try. I might even encourage you, if you get a chance. We're hopefully going to be going through the rest of chapter 26, but that is 75 verses in chapter 26. So we probably won't be able to literally read all of them out loud, but they're all so important to Jesus's passion narrative. So maybe I'll try and find some spots that we'll skip. But if you get a chance, feel free to read the rest of chapter 26 between now and next week. But otherwise, we'll be on for that. That'll be great.
Good.
Would somebody be willing to close us out with a little prayer today? I'll be happy to do it. God, thank you for the ways that you have gifted us with talents, that they may be different, but together you can increase them. We thank you for the ways that we can be happily surprised that we can serve you, whether it's through offering food or water, or visiting those who are lonely, or just offering that ministry of presence to one another. And God, help us encourage, support, and lead with acts of love, with lavish acts of love, and to not deny one another their gifts. So be with us and help us see you in these little moments of grace and these little moments of your kingdom breaking through. Be with us and guide us and help us take care of ourselves so that we can take care of our neighbors. We pray this in your Son's name. Amen. Well, thank you, everybody.